Most of us have all heard about karate, taekwondo and kung-fu and often fancy around these martial arts. But how many of you know that all these martial arts were derived from a much older Indian martial art from the ancient Spice Gate Hills in Kerala? Yes, you heard it right. It is from this 3000 years old indigenous martial art called the Kalaripayattu. So hello all, I am AI Bobby, a time traveler, and I will be navigating you through the world of untold stories. So welcome aboard to the Untold Stories. Please do click on the subscribe button for more such untold stories. So today let me narrate to you this untold story about this oldest martial art in the world, often called as the mother of all martial arts in the world. So let's get started. We often talk about Kerala's scenic beauties of nature, its greenery, hills, mountains, tea and coffee plantations, beaches and backwaters. But we usually don't talk about Kerala's ancient and a memorable history and culture of this land. Kalaripayattu, which is an ancient Indian martial art form with a history that dates back over 3000 years. It is, without a doubt, one of the world's oldest martial art forms that combines physical combat techniques, self-defense tactics, exercise routines and spiritual elements. Kalaripayattu is indigenous to Kerala, and the word Kalaripayattu in Malayalam is derived from two words, Kalari, meaning battleground, and Payattu, meaning training of martial arts. That is, it's an art that mixes the training for combat with physical and mental conditioning. True to Kerala's culture, Kalaripayattu also integrates yoga and Ayurveda. It also includes the use of various traditional Malabari, indigenous Kerala weapons, such as the flexible swords, called the Urumi. There are several schools where one can witness people practicing this martial art. The traditional Kalari schools have historically been centers of learning, a place that not only imparted martial knowledge, but also lessons on philosophy, ethics, and the deeper understanding of the human body and mind. The history of Kalaripayattu is as old as the history of martial arts themselves, derived from the Sanskrit word Kalarika, meaning battlefield or training ground. Kalaripayattu is one of the most ancient forms of martial arts still practiced in the world. The earliest documented evidence of Kalaripayattu are in the form of palm leaf manuscripts with drawings of fighters, found in Kerala from about 200 BCE. But it is possible it is several hundred years older than that. The Dhanurveda, an ancient Indian text on military science, tells us that Kalaripayattu is one of the 64 art forms existing in Indian mythology. Now coming to the story of how this indigenous treasured martial art spread to far-off places in the Tibetan and Chinese mainland, eventually becoming Kung Fu, Karate and Taekwondo. This brings us to the story of Bodhidharma. He is believed to have been born in the Tamil heartland, belonging to the warrior caste. He was born a prince, the third son of the ruling king, Pallava. It is believed that the curious young prince once visited neighboring land of Kerala, after hearing the great stories of the land being a melting pot for different religions, cultures and traditions, and eventually learned the ways of Buddhism present in ancient Kerala. He soon became acquainted with the ancient martial art Kalaripayattu practiced by most of the people of Kerala. He soon became well versed in Kalaripayattu. After his teacher's passing, he gave up his title of prince and dedicated his life to being a monk and set out from South India to spread the philosophies of Buddhism. Once leaving India in 522 AD, Bodhidharma went north into China, where he found a home in the recently established Shaolin monastery. He encountered monks living there. He began to teach them his style of dhyan meditation, only to discover the monks did not possess the stamina of body to continue. He then showed them the breathing techniques and Kalaripayattu body conditioning and fighting exercises to help the monks increase the levels of prana in their bodies. Prana is the vital energy present in all life, also called chi, or ki. So the combination of Kalaripayattu practices and meditation techniques brought to China from Kerala by Bodhidharma has given him the title of Father of Martial Arts. Once there he wrote 2 books about conditioning the body for control and flexibility. From these 2 books he designed a strict physical and mental training regime which he later began teaching to the Shaolin monks. The exercises he created and developed that were most likely based on the moves of Kalaripayattu were the very beginnings of what developed into Shaolin Kung Fu. Bodhidharma, known as Dhammo in China and Japan. He is still an important figure in the history of China and Japan and is also known there as Dhammo. Further, other martial arts evolved from the basic Kalaripayattu martial practices. Karate also has similar movements and principles. Even the name karate has connotations with Kalaripayattu. In Japanese, karate means empty hand. The third stage of Kalaripayattu training is called Veramke, which also means empty hand. The 11th century in Kerala hailed in a period in Kalaripayattu history of feudal politics and warfare that lasted for hundreds of years, right up until the British East India Company arrived on the shores of Malabar. The most significant rivalry during the early years of feudal Kerala was between two kingdoms called Chera and Chola. Kalaripayattu, having been developed in Kerala, already had a strong influence on the fighting techniques of the warriors of the time, but the constant war between Chera and Chola strengthened its foothold in the military styles of that period. Due to the ever-present need for well-trained, fighting-fit troops, both kingdoms made the practice of Kalaripayattu a compulsory activity for all men of fighting age. For the citizens of each kingdom, it was their national duty to condition themselves to be ready for battle at any time. Many look back on this chapter of history as the golden age of Kalaripayattu. The huge demand for training grounds and instructors resulted in a massive increase in Kalaris being built all over Kerala, each one with its own burrukal. From the 12th to 14th centuries, this trend continued until almost every village in Kerala had its own Kalari, managed by its own burrukal. From this explosion of participation, a huge varieties of Kalari evolved from the standard Nalthiradi Kalari, 42 feet long. Their size of the Kalaris varied hugely from the super-sized Amthiradi Kalari, 52 feet long, all the way down to the tiny Patinatadi Kalari, just 18 feet long. Several variations on the techniques used also emerged during this period and are recorded in the legendary songs that recount the history of Kalaripayattu. The Vadakkan Pattu styles such as Nedum, Kuram, Thodu, Cheru and Anga became popular at the time, but most have now died out. One such style whose creation had significant consequences was Anga Kalari. Anga Kalari revolves around one-on-one combat between two warriors. Usually the participants of the fight had been selected and hired by a member of the ruling class of that area. The purpose of the fight, or enjam, was to settle a dispute between the employers of the warriors. Sometimes this meant ownership of whole kingdoms could be on the line. Often the enjams were fights to the death, and so only the bravest and most skilled Kalaripayattu warriors participated in them. Once a request to fight an enjam had been accepted, the title of Chekavar was awarded to the warrior. Today, in Kerala, only two variations of Kalaripayattu remain: Vadakkan, Northern, Kalari, and Tekkan, Southern, Kalari. One more stunning fact is that Kalaripayattu was not only confined to Hindus of Kerala, but as Kerala boasts religious harmony, this ancient martial art was practiced by the Syrian Christians of Kerala, also locally called Nasranis, and the Mappiya Muslims. But majorly Kalaripayattu was practiced by elite members of the Kerala Nayar and Syrian Christian communities. Another striking feature was Kalaripayattu was also practiced by several women in Kerala as self-defense. Now coming into the rituals of the Kalaripayattu. Ankam, meaning battle. After fixing the date for the Ankam, the Chekavas stay in the Kalari itself for practice and meditation. This, Ankam Notarikal, should be for the blessing of Kalari family deity, to achieve concentration and for repeating the tactics. On the day of the Ankam, the setting out of the Chekavan will be solemn. He prepares for the Ankam wearing a sectarian or ornamental mark made on the forehead, usually of sacred ashes or sandal paste, and wears a long shawl or piece of costly cloth that gained for the prowess of the warrior. Golden girdle and a Viryachangala, chain of power. His companions also prepare with spears and chavla. On the way to the place of Ankam, the Chekavan was accompanied by the public with shouts of exultation and Chinese firecrackers. This was a recognition for him and a great inspiration for his fighting prowess. Usually they would make new weapons or polish traditionally used ones for the Ankam. Skilled blacksmiths were there for this. They would mold the weapons by filing, fixing the bolt and soldering. There were also skilled carpenters who were trained in constructing Ankathattu. Tattu Vasangal. A ritual used to worship Ankathattu was conducted and handed over for the Ankam. Nadavaji has the responsibility over the construction and arrangements of the Ankathattu. At the end of the dispute, disputers should explain the cause of the dispute and the efforts made so far to resolve it in front of the public. It means all the efforts taken to resolve the dispute was a failure and the disputers were ready to accept the solution through the last resort. Ankam. The Ankachekavan was not merely given the role of a ruffian but was consecrated at a height of an honorable judge. During the British colonial period in India, traditional martial arts like Kalaripayattu faced suppression. The British authorities imposed regulations against these indigenous practices, and many traditional knowledge systems were marginalized. realizing major indigenous threats like the Nuko Varmam and the Mamam Vidya of Kalaripayattu, in which Nuko Varmam is activated by eyes attentively looking at a particular Varmam point to making to lose his mind or unconsciousness, and Marmavidya involved using special finger touchings at specific points on body which could even lead to paralysis of the entire body. It is believed that after encountering some Marmavidya attacks from Kerala Kalari soldiers, the British got really scared of this indigenous martial art and hence banned and declared that they would cut off fingers of those who were found practicing Marmavidya in Kerala. And finally in 1804, the British banned Kalaripayattu in Kerala in response to the Kottayattu War, a rebellion against British rule in Kerala led by the Karulite king Pazhassi Raja. The ban came into effect shortly after Pazhassi Raja's death on November 30, 1805, resulting in the closure of most of the major Kalari training grounds in Kerala. Following the ban, many Karulite Gurukuls of Kalaripayattu resisted the ban and continued to teach Kalaripayattu to their students in secret. Gurukuls such as Kottikkal Kanaran Gurukul, Kovilkandi Kelukurub Gurukul and Maroli Ramani Gurukul learned and preserved the martial art for posterity and were responsible for preserving Kalaripayattu up to the beginning of the 20th century, as well as sparking the revival of Kalaripayattu in Kerala in the 1920s. The resurgence of public interest in Kalaripayattu began in the 1920s in Thalassery, as part of a wave of rediscovery of the traditional arts throughout southern India, and continued through the 1970 surge of general worldwide interest in martial arts. During this period of renewed public interest in Kerala's native martial art, Kalaripayattu Gurukuls such as Chambadan Vitil Narayanan Nair and Chirakkal T. Sridharan Nair rose to prominence as the primary Gurukuls who preserved and transmitted the martial during the 20th century and into the modern era. Soon several Kalaris were opened and began to spread Kalaripayattu across its native state of Kerala, revitalizing the art across the state in the 20th century. Chirakkal T. Sridharan Nair is also widely credited for reviving and preserving Kalaripayattu by writing the first books ever written on Kalaripayattu, as well as writing the first authoritative text on the martial art. It included all the oral commands of all the exercises relating to Mepiyattu, or conditioning techniques. Hence now coming to the conclusion. Kalaripayattu has a complex and fascinating history that encompasses cultural, martial, and historical elements. It has evolved over millennia and continues to be a vital part of India's martial heritage, with a growing international presence. The legacy of Kalaripayattu, which is undoubtedly the world's oldest martial art, is seen in the forms, techniques, and strategies of various martial arts worldwide including karate, taekwondo and kung-fu. The appeal of Kalaripayattu transcended its martial aspects and started to be appreciated for its role in physical fitness, self-discipline, and spiritual development. People from diverse backgrounds are drawn to it not only for self-defense but also as a means of physical fitness, flexibility, and mental discipline. It is considered a unique way to connect with Indian culture and heritage. In Kerala, Kalaripayattu is deeply embedded in the culture and heritage of the region. It is not only a martial art but also a cultural expression. Kalaripayattu performances are often part of traditional festivals and ceremonies in Kerala. Practitioners, known as Gurukuls, are highly respected within their communities, and their knowledge is passed down through generations, keeping the cultural significance of Kalaripayattu alive. Although today, Kalaripayattu is taught and practiced in specialized training centers and schools both in Kerala and around the world, it is not as spread and popular as karate, taekwondo or kung-fu, ironically even after they being derived from Kalaripayattu itself. This is a usual problem with most of Indians. We fancy foreign culture and things, even without realizing that some of these have been derived or copied from our own indigenous Indian culture, which we do not appreciate, because we consider it is Indian, so it's local and of no value. We only want to learn global things. Isn't it ironic that karate and taekwondo, which are actually martial arts derived from the great Kalaripayattu martial art, has innumerable classes and coaching centers with millions of Indian students fancying the martial art? But how many Kalaripayattu training centers are seen around India in comparison with karate classes? It is okay to fancy and get inspired by foreign culture and traditions. But first we should acknowledge and appreciate our indigenous culture and art first. And this should not only be restrained in our thoughts but must be portrayed through our actions. Thank you for being patient listeners. This is signing off. AI Bobby from The Untold Stories. For more such informative, Untold Stories subscribe our channel. For you it's just a click of the button, and no loss. But for us it is an encouragement to keep telling you untold stories. Thank you.